early, so we will putter around until our friends arrive. Hey everybody, we're getting all set up. Hope you're arriving. Thank you, honey. We hope you are arriving. Okay.
Shows two.
It does?
Yep.
Yours is faster. We're on different times or something. Hi everybody. Oh yeah, I see. If you're here, say hi so I'll be able to say hi back. Hi Connie, how are you? It's good to see you're here. Thank you for joining. Okay, I want to see who all is here. Someone else, probably me. I'm here and Connie's here. And thank you. Happy Monday right back to you. It has been a good Monday. It has been a really good Monday. I've gotten a lot done today.
They're popping in fast now.
Good. Hi, everybody. When you get here, say hey so I can do a shout out to you so I'll know you're here. When you know what, my highlighter got me all over me. Okay. Oh, yay. We're showing up. Hey, everybody. It is 6 o'clock, I think. I don't have a watch on. I don't see a clock. It's 6 o'clock straight up. Good. It's time to go. Okay. Thank you for being here. It is February. Can you believe that? So we're glad you're here. It's Marvelous Monday. I hope you've had a marvelous Monday. And if not, maybe this will help you get there if you are trying to have a marvelous Monday. But it's February. Can you believe that? It's already February. So I'm excited about February. It's always, hi Nita. Nita's here. Yay. Hey Janice, how are you? I'm so glad y'all are here. Okay, so today I am going to be talking all about borders. That was a request from a friend of mine here in town who is a new quilter, and her name is Connie. So I'm hoping Connie shows so she will know that this was inspired by her. In front of me is my quilting machine, and I meant to say this last week, but forgot. So this is what a quilt looks like when it is on my machine. So y'all get to see what I'm working on. So the way it works is I have this quilt, and I think it's, 78 by 88 or something. So it's pretty wide. And the way I load a quilt on my long arm quilting machine, and Doug, you might want to just show him the machine over here. That's my long arm quilting machine, and that's the sewing part, and it moves around on a track. So now you can come back. And then, so what happens is on my rollers, I put the back, and it's facing the floor. And then I load batting. Can you see this? I load batting on top of the back, and then I load the top facing up. So when the stitching goes, when the machine is stitching, it stitches through all three layers. So it's a uniquely American art form. Utility. I mean, it's utility. Obviously, we use them for blankets and stuff like that. But a quilt is defined as three layers, a top, a back, and then the batting, whatever goes in the middle. So, hey, Catherine, glad you're here. So I have my quilt loaded. This is a quilt that I've been working on literally for almost a year. I started it in March of last year. It is called Promises of God. Each individual block, I took some really nice, really upscaled muslin that's almost a linen look, and I cut it using a tool that'll be coming out this fall, so hint, hint. And I designed, there are 68 blocks, and it is reverse applique. So Doug is going to scan the quilt so you can see what the blocks are looking like. I've talked about this a little bit on showing you some of my blocks in the past. But this is what it looks like as I'm quilting it. So I am, it's really colorful. It's an ombre fabric, and it's called Confetti, and it has gold dots on it. Do you see these gold dots? And then it has the fabric that is the darkest. So let's talk about what an ombre is. An ombre goes from light to dark. And on this particular line, the dark was at the selvage and the light was at the fold of the, when it was on the bolt. And then it went back to dark. So people have a hard time sometimes imagining what to use an ombre for. Well, I love ombres. Here's a beautiful example of it. It goes from dark right here all the way across to light and then back to dark. So this is what's been rolled up and quilted already. So now to show you some specifics on it, I'm doing the quilting. I want it to look like breath, wind, God's word, and I didn't want to use any computer, or I just wanted it to be that. And so while I'm quilting it, I'm making these little swirls and these little things that hopefully look a little bit like wind or breath. And then each block is, this is the muslin right here, and it has not been quilted down, so it will be quilted down, but right now it's got a little bit of pucker to it because I stitched it down around the edges, but that's okay. I'll work that out when I quilt it. This is muslin, and then I hand cut. All of this is wool, and then I stitched all that down. I designed all these blocks, and there are 68 of them. And this verse is the city on the hill. Now look here. This is a different muslin, and I printed on that, and it's the verse number. So this verse is Matthew 5:14, and it says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." So that's what believers are. And so I did that block for that verse. And then Matthew 6:26 says, look at the birds in the air. I'm sorry, that is the wrong verse. This is the one about the flowers in the field, how beautiful they are, and they're arrayed like Solomon. And you know what? I can't quote it because I am not good at that. I just know the essence of it. So what I did was I cut all the little pieces of wool, stitched them down, and then beaded them. See these little windows are beads. And I did 68 of these. Doug, I didn't ask you to do this earlier, but I'll show you this one over here. Let's look at this one. See these little flowers right here? They're all beaded and all this. So I'm working on this as a pattern book where I will have this block and how to make it and so forth, or the drawing for that. So that's what I'm working on. I've got about 1,000 hours in it so far. I still have to quilt maybe a third of it. And then after I quilt it, then I have to, square it up, put the binding on, and I have to put a sleeve on the back so that a rod will go through it. So anyway, that's what I'm working on, just so you know. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to cover that up with my cardboard, but we had to wait to... I wanted to show you this before we got there. Doug's gonna... I can't help him. There's nothing I can do to help him. There you go. Thank you, love. Appreciate that. Okay, so this quilt that's on here will just show a little the back. This is some of the backing. So today we have, hey, who else has shown up? There are 10 of you here. I'm so glad. Thank you so much. So, like every other Monday, what I do is I start off by saying I pray for you. Well, I woke up this morning praying for you. You were the first thing on my mind this morning. So, know that you've been prayed over today. So, our topic today is about borders, and I'm going to talk about borders. And the first question I'm going to address is, do you have to have a border? Do you need to have a border? And the answer is always, do you want to have a border? So, you get to answer that for each quilt. Now, I will tell you, we will start with no borders at all. Some quilts don't need borders. Some quilts are the more contemporary or the more modern they are, they don't need borders. So I have a whole stack. We're going to go through about, I don't know how many y'all can keep count of my quilts. But I'm going to hold this one up and, well, I'm going to toss it and I'm going to put it over this thing. So Doug may have to adjust the camera. Okay. Tell me when it's...
Okay, it's in the picture.
You can see it?
Yes.
Okay. This quilt is called Detonated Dandelion, and it was made using my Dresden plate tool. You can see that, right? You see the dandelion exploding. What I was trying to do is just mimic that dandelion exploding. Now, if you'll notice, this is an ombre fabric too. It was all in the same bolt from light to dark, and I used the dark and the dandelion, and the further it got away from the center of the dandelion, the lighter it got. But you see how modern this is? It's got a low volume fabric. This is actually a text. It has text on it, and the cutest fabric ever. It is every single word on here, or every single phrase on here, is the name of a quilt store. I love that. Hey Pam, glad you're here. So all of these are quilt shops. I just thought that was so cute. So I got it. It's typewriter font looking. So it's really, really cute and very modern. But you see there's no border needed on this one. That's the way modern quilts are. You just do what they are and move on. Borders tend to be very traditional. Now, I will move this out of the way. I've got bunches more. Okay.
I can take them this way too if you want me to.
So, this one y'all have seen before, I believe. Many of you have seen this one before. This one is using the orange peel tool, making the outline on the front of the block. Got it? For the edges?
I'm working.
Okay, the top edge is the one that really matters.
I already have the top edge.
Okay. All right, so this one, there is no border, but then it's very, very modern, right? So a border would frame all of these designs, and sometimes you don't want that. You just want your design to go all the way to the edge. So this, I'll tell you how it was made. I took the 10-inch block, I took the tool, I drew the shape, then I took bias tape that I made, which is super, super easy to do. And then stitched it down both ways. This, maybe I can do this. This is a block. See that? And it's literally 6 blocks across and 6 blocks down. So it's, and then I cut the little window. This was prior to the release of the tool. And what I learned in this experience was that the window needed to be a little bit bigger. So this little tiny window is not exactly what you get when you get the tool, but it's the same shape. It's just not as big. I just made it a little bit bigger. So no border needed on something modern like this. Sure, Doug, if you want to pull that and just put it right over there. That'd be awesome. Thank you, dear. Okay. The next one is, oh, look behind me. I have a bunch, obviously, of mini quilts or block quilts that I'm going to show you that I've just collected over the years. And one time there was a group, which was really fun. A group of us signed up online. We didn't know each other. Hey, Jack, glad you're here. A bunch of the quilters signed up, and we decided that we would make each other a mini quilt, which is just a block, basically, and exchange them. So it was just an exchange thing. So you had to make something, then you had to give something away. So this one right here was a gift. This is what's called a log cabin. You see how it starts here and then works its way around? So that's a log cabin. However, this one has sashing on it, or between each of these. Actually, that's not sashing. It is bias tape that she stitched down for border to give it that stained glass look. But you see, when she finished that, she didn't need to have a border, right? The block was enough, or the quilt was enough. Imagine that blown up to a 60 by 70, or I guess it'd be 60 by 60 size, right? So it wouldn't have to have a border because it's so graphic in nature. So there you go. Hey, Pat, it's okay to be late. You are not in trouble, that's for sure. Okay, so sometimes you do want borders. So sometimes you don't, but sometimes you do. So there is a thing in the quilting world called a medallion quilt, and it is where you have something in the center and you build borders around it so that it will center and focus on what is in the middle. So this quilt I'm about to unfold was made with the Dresden picture window tool, and it has one of the Dresdens in the center. See the medallion in the center, and then I put two borders outside of it to make it bigger, right? So it is also kind of to calm the eye. It also brings whatever's in the center into focus. Your eye just kind of rests on the fabric around it. And so this is a medallion quilt. Okay, that one's done. Two big borders on that one. The next one I'm going to do is, I'm going to tell you about this one. This is part of a panel. So you know how panels will have little sayings and stuff? This is a panel. And then I added the orange as a border, and then I put a binding on it. But this was too busy, in my opinion, to just leave it without a border. It really needed a border. Someplace to just frame it in, to kind of calm the eye kind of thing. Just give yourself a place to just rest. So that's another reason you put a border on, is to give your eye a place to rest. Okay. Now, practically, from a practical perspective, one of the reasons you add borders is to make it bigger. Just like the t-shirt quilt where I just added those two big borders to make it bigger. That's a real practical reason to add borders, right? I mean, I want it bigger, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing it. So y'all know I love vintage, and my mother loves pinks and spring colors and sort of the pastels. Well, not pastels, but kind of Easter colors, I guess. And I have this tablecloth. It's a vintage tablecloth, and it's worn, and it's a bit faded. Thanks, honey. And it has it has threads on it, but ignore that because I can pull those off. And I was working on a quilting pattern. I was seeing if a quilting pattern would work, and you can't. I just didn't figure I could hurt this. So what I did was this tablecloth only went to here, like right here. But I wanted to add a bit to it so it would be bigger, and it would be like a throw that my mom could put over her sofa. Y'all, I put things like this over my sofa all the time. So I added a border because I needed, from a practical perspective, I needed a bigger size. So that's all I did. It's kind of fun though, isn't it? I think it's sweet. Now she can put this on her dining table, or she can put it over the back of her sofa, or she can sit in her chair. She can put it over her feet in the bed. It's just color, and it's a way for her to, and these are her, this is like her, she loves the pinks and the yellows and the oranges and all that. So it's kind of springy, and I'm getting that ready. I haven't put the binding on it yet, but I will be getting that ready. I'm watching him pile the quilts up. Okay, so I just added one border to that one, and the t-shirt quilt I added two borders. Now, if you were going to ask me how many borders or too many borders. I don't think there's such a thing as too many. It just depends on what you're working on. So let me tell you a game that quilters play. It's called Round Robin. And I've never done it, but I've seen many of them. And I've heard about it for years, but I've just never participated. So the way it works is you create your own center medallion. So for example, y'all have seen this before, so I'll show it to you again. I would put this as my center medallion. And then all these people who get together or mail them to each other if it's long distance, I would send this, and I would send any scraps or fabrics that I might have or background or whatever I want in it. If I have something like that, I can put it in the box and give it to the next person. Oh, and by the way, you know what they do? They go to the pizza places and they get empty, clean, like brand new empty pizza boxes. It's the smartest thing ever. They'll get these boxes and put their quilt stuff in it, and then they'll put their name on the front and pass it around every time they meet, like once a month. So then if I got this from somebody and some fabrics, then I could add my own fabrics, or if I was picky, I could tell them to just use mine, but I probably wouldn't. And then the next person would put a border around it, whatever border they wanted to put. So you can use your imagination, all the different kinds of borders. Anyway, like say for example, 6 or 8 people in the group, and by the time everybody has, this thing would be a big old quilt and have a variety of borders around it. So no, there's no maximum number of borders at all, and you can play with them, and that's really a fun game. Someday I'm going to play that game with somebody. It's called Round Robin, the Quilt Border Round Robin. Then, okay, so I do a lot of charity quilting, right? So we make quilts through the Christian Quilt Guild here in town. And I showed you this last week, but I'm going to bring it up for a different reason. I made blocks, and then I added 2 borders, since we're just looking, I mean, the focus tonight is on borders. Thank you, dear. And so, see, I have 2 borders here. I have this is a block. See it? I can't hold it in. I only have, sadly, I only have 2 arms. It's always been a hindrance to life. Okay, so there you go. There's a block. So in this one, I wanted it bigger because it's going to be a lap, like a throw. So I didn't want to just extend this because it made it too plain. And I wanted to kind of corral this, right? So I wanted it to have a noticeable stop. That's why the double color, you know, like the blue is separating the color. So, yeah, that's Carlene. Hey, I'm glad you're here. So, anyway, this is a double border, real simple to do. But this is the example of doing a double border. Okay, next, let's see. Oh, so sometimes I have seen it done and I have done it, and I didn't bring the quilt to show you, but some quilts have borders on 2 ends, but not all 4 ends. And so that sounds interesting, doesn't it? Let me find it. This one. Okay, so mug rugs are still quilted, and my girlfriend made this little mug rug, and it was like this big. Well, it was the white. Then she added this border, and then she added this border, and she only did it on 2 ends. So if you want something to stay in the shape of a rectangle, and I'll look around to see if I can find it. I have a pattern where I did a Texas medallion quilt, and I made a square, and then I added strips of borders on the top and the bottom to make it longer. So that's a way to extend the length, but not the width. So, and then, because we do a lot of charity quilting, I was looking today for something, And I have a bin of quilts that I need to quilt so that we can give them in the fall. And so I just collect them. I leave them down there, and when I'm not swamped, I'll throw one on and have, and quilt it up. My machine has a computer, and so I can set it up and then let it quilt automatically. I don't have to stand and drive it like I am on this one. But I found this precious quilt. That was made for a kid's quilt, and you see it's a 9-patch. This is a 9-patch. It has 9 pieces, and then on this block she did a sashing and then a 9-patch and a sashing, and she did rows like that. Then she sashed between the rows, and then look at the borders. She added a purple border on the end, but not, purple border on the end, but on these here she added a blue border. You see, the blue border doesn't go all the way around. I'm not sure how to explain that.
I'm getting a picture of it.
Okay, so no blue border here. So on 2 sides she has borders and not on the ends, or whatever they are. 2 sides have borders, blue borders, and 2 sides don't. So that's another way to make it longer instead of, closer to square. So you have lots and lots of options when it comes to borders. Okay. Put that away. And then you have tons of variety on borders. So borders can be anywhere from 1 inch all the way around, or partially around, or whatever you're going to do, to 9 or 10 inches wide. That Tula Pink one had a real wide border. So you can do decorative borders too. Everything doesn't have to be strips, although it can be strips. And before I go to decorative, let me show you something. If I wanted to widen or make bigger a square, I could just add strips. This is a 2.5-inch jelly roll. I could just add that all the way around. The way I do it is I put my strip, the border, I do it on the sides, and then the top, and then at the bottom. But that's just me. I have a really good friend who's in competition quilts a lot, and she does just the opposite. She does across the top and the bottom, and then does the long strips down the side because her quilts hang. And I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but she says it does. So that's good. So this is one way to add a border. Here's another thing you can do using strips to make a border. This will be interesting for you. Some of you, I'm sure, have seen this. Some of you maybe not. If I have something that I want to add a border to, I can take 4 of these strips, just like this, and sew them side by side. See that? I've sewn them one to the next, to the next, to the next, right? Just the long strips. If I lay that down and I take and I measure, these are 2.5-inch strips. If I measure 2.5 inches in and cut that, it's going to look like this, right? See that? Everybody see that? So that's just cutting that off. And then if I cut another one and just cut that whole thing up and I started sewing them together, here's a border. This could go, I know it's not going to go around this one, but, it would be a border. So, there is how you don't do squares. Don't sew together your squares. Sew together your strips, and then cut them apart and then stitch them back together. It's the way that one works. So there's a quick and easy multicolored border, and I love that border. Now, another way you can do it is the same sort of thing, except instead of cutting it 2.5 inches wide, you can do it like at this length. Let me show you a quilt I did that on. I took a class with Nancy Mahoney, a quilter, and she was here at our guild, and this was her quilt. And I don't normally follow other people's patterns much, but on this one I did for a couple reasons, because she was showing, falling apart here. She was showing us invisible applique and how to do circles and then stitch them down, and she was using monofilament thread. Now what that is clear plastic thread that looks like, it is not, but it looks like fishing wire, and it's clear. And so there's some techniques you have to, if you're going to use that thread, there's some techniques you need to know, because it, you know, it's plastic, and so there's some tricks. However, and I learned her technique, and they were great, but when I came home, she was putting a circle right here and appliquing it down. I came home and did reverse applique because it's me, right? And my Dresden tool has that perfect circle. So I did the circle in the middle of this little block right here, and then I hand stitched all these little dots of wool on there. And then I put my small Dresden tool as a decorative corner, and then I put wool there just to brighten it up a little bit, because this quilt wasn't bright enough, I guess. But you see this top border across here? That's called a piano key border. And so it's the same thing as this one is, in just different fabrics. See it? Am I in camera?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. All right, so now I'm going to show you these blocks so that you can understand this quilt. You see, this is, excuse me, this is a block. And this is a block. And it's just alternating these two things. So it's not a hard quilt at all. And it turned out, I thought it turned out super cute. And then I was learning wool at the time, so I invested time in the wool and quilted it, and then used all my scraps and all my extra pieces on the back. So I love this little quilt, even though it's not my pattern, but I love this little quilt. Okay, so that's piano keys. That's a piano key border. Okay, are we doing good? Hey, Vicki. Hey, Ann. Glad y'all are here. Ooh, I miss y'all so bad. Let's see. Piano key. Oh, I'll show you another border. So this is the new tool, and got it?
Not yet.
I can't see. Couldn't see. Okay. So this is the new tool, and this is, I'll show you the block. Here's the block right there. See that? So this is the new tool, the orange peel. This is the little window inside, and then this on the corner are little triangles on the corner. That's called snowballing, and when you put a triangle on the corner, it's called snowballing. Now this quilt does have a border, even though you don't really see that it's a border. Let me show you the border. Let me find it, and then I'll show it to you. There it is. Do you see that? It's a rectangle with, you probably can't see that, can you?
Okay.
They can? Okay, all right. I guess I'm going to have to get a big old mirror so I don't know what's on there. Okay, so that's my border. Isn't that interesting? So what I did there, I've never seen anybody do that. Doesn't mean they haven't. I've just never seen them do it. Let me tell you, I just knew what I needed to do. So, in a different color, hi Ann. Okay, so here's the piece of fabric, right? It's a rectangle, just like this. And then, this is in the purple, I took a square, right? And I stitched. Do you see how I stitched from this corner to this corner? Right? So there it is, all stitched down. Then I flip this over and look at that. That's a snowball. So that corner has been snowballed. That's what that's called. And you see all this? This is the original fabric. And then the extra piece, you just trim that away. And then you have this. That's what this border is. So when I made these, I made this just exactly like this. Put a snowball in the light blue. Now this one, I had to make two different directions. I had to do the same thing except snowball for this corner. So I had to do half of them one way and half the other. It's directional. But I figured it out. But this is a form of a border. It's half as wide as the block and then it's snowballed. That way I could have these little diamonds that just popped up. Pretty clever. So easy, right? It's not that I'm so smart. It's just I'm looking for easy. So I'm going to let Doug pull that one away. Okay. The next three I'm going to show you are Parable of the Sower. Okay. This is a quilt. I don't know if I've shown you or not. This is one of my all-time favorite quilts ever in the history of quilt making. Of my quilt making. Now, there are a lot of quilts out there that are... And I'm going to take this Thursday night to the Quilt Guild to show everybody. But I'm going to hold it up so you can see the whole thing. Got it, Doug? I can't...
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to tell y'all about this quilt. So, the Parable... Can you pull it forward for me? I'm knocking stuff over back here. Thank you. The first block is the Parable of the Sower. Jesus is talking about spreading the gospel, and it's like a farmer who tosses seed, and a bird comes along and eats it up. Can you see it? The little seed right here in the bird. And it does no good. Then the next block is he tells about the seed lands on very rocky ground, and because it doesn't have deep roots and because of the heat, it withers and dies and goes away. Now this is using my tool again. This one down here, oh gosh, got that one in view? That one is someone hears the word and the thorns grow up around them and it gets choked out. Like life chokes out, wealth and distractions and stuff like that. But for the believers who stay firmly rooted in the word, you have a garden. And then look at my blocks. That's the garden. And I beaded all those. It's wool and then I quilted around them. And I think that's kind of fun. And no matter what happens, your quilt will always grow little threads. I don't know how that happens, but it does. But what I want to show you here is the border. So let's look at this border over here. Okay, this is a rectangle. Do you see that? Half of it is green and half of it is the blue, but it's diagonal, right? And then I have a square. And then look, this is a block. It's a rectangle. Half is blue, half is green. That's what I've done on each corner. A rectangle, half green, half blue, half green, half blue, and then green in the middle. So the effect is sort of a spotlight looking, would you say? I've never seen anybody do this on a border. but it just felt like I needed to draw attention to it in that way. So that's what I did. Thank you, Connie. It's kind of fun. I love this. I love the colors of this quilt. I love the message in this quilt. I love that I was learning to do wool in this quilt, so I'm really happy with it.
This is the ombre again with the light in the center.
Good. So I talked earlier about the ombre. See how it's dark here, and then this is the light. So I tried to line this up with what fabric I was left with at the end to do that. This is called sashing. So that's good to know. Sashing is between blocks, and borders are what goes around the whole thing. But I tried to make it light in the center and then the darker on the edges. So that is one of the, I've never seen anybody do that border, so I don't know what it's called. I'll tell you what it looks like to me, those stage lights. That's what I'm going to call it. Y'all help me. Yes, sunbeam or stage lights. Yes, exactly. That is exactly right. Now, I am going to show you a small quilt, and this is before I made this quilt prior to ever inventing my tool. And there's a whole story about it. My daughter-in-law wanted a pin the tail on the donkey game for my granddaughter's birthday party, and she sent my son to get one, and I laughed and said, they don't sell those anymore. Pins are dangerous. Kids can't play with pins. And I was right, and she didn't realize it, and so it was kind of a family joke. Who knew? But not long after that, we went on a trip. This was in 2016, and we were in a vintage, like, antiques. We went to this quilt shop, but they were closed. But next door was a vintage, what is it, like a antique mall thing? And because we were traveling and we wanted to stretch our legs, we went in. And I found a vintage pin the tail on a donkey. So I was inspired by that little donkey to make this quilt. Got it? Okay. So this little precious little donkey is the donkey that I was inspired by the pin the tail on the donkey. And so you can tell, it's collage. So the way it's just pieces of fabric that I just tacked down and then, drew the shape and tacked it down and then quilted it. Okay, so it's pin the tail on the donkey. It has my pins, pretending like the kids had already pinned on it. So I'm going to flip this out and talk to you about the border. And I got this out today. If you'll pull that straight for me. Pull it all the way out, please. Thank you.
Getting there.
Huh?
Said I was getting there.
Okay, thank you. So what I did on the border here, or the inside, this was my medallion, the green, right? Because every donkey needs a green sky. Y'all, I grew up in West Texas, and green sky meant tornadoes. I kind of had that in mind. And then what I did is I used the blue to separate it. And I did it all the way down. And then I snowballed the corner. So I cut off the blue, what was there. And then I used the pink to come up. And I did the same thing. I cut off the corner with the green. I've already shown you the snowball. So I did that on each corner. So it gives it this sort of picture frame-ish look. And then the outer border, so in border, first border, second border, third border, I worked hard when I was putting this on to make sure that I got the green somewhere close so that that background, so see how I matched it to this is different fabric. I didn't have any more of this, but it's similar, right? So I wanted the outside of these two borders to look like the picture still extended. So I'll show it to you again. Oh, thank you, Tawny. So I love this little guy. And, hint, hint, I have another one using that same little donkey with the cutest pulling and the cutest little flower cart. And the flower cart wheels are using my small Dresden plate tool. And all I have to do is get it quilted. It's waiting in line to be quilted. So you will see another donkey quilt coming out very, very soon. Now, if you don't live near me and you want this like in a class or something, I can always do that. Y'all know that, right? I can teach anything I've ever made. I know how I did it all. It's just harder for me to... Okay, now I'm going to show you another one of my... I'm going to get a drink. Another one of my favorite quilts that I made, and I made it in 2018. Before the tool invention. Well, actually, I made it while I was inventing the tool, but I didn't have the tool down, so, but it's about the borders. But I made this so we could hang it as a backdrop at my dad's 90th birthday. So he will be 93 this year. Thank you, honey. Okay, y'all, look at this. Y'all see it? So it is one of those wonky Dresdens in the middle, not using my tool. There's if you go out on Pinterest, you'll find this. It's a Dresden. I think this is the 22-degree blade. And there are 24 blades. And what she did was she had them short and long and short and long. Well, guess what I did? I wanted it to be for a birthday, so I put candle or fire flames or whatever. You know, like pretended like there were candles. Never seen one like that either. That was my center medallion. And then I surrounded it with the pinwheels because pinwheels and Dad was 90 and, you know, whatever. And then that's the pinwheel border. So this is a border, right? And then I added a big fat yellow border all the way around. But look how I decorated the yellow border. I'll show you here first. I just did the yellow border. Just plain. Quilt. Then I made these little pennants, front and back, right? And then along the top edge, I just stitched them straight up, stitched them straight to my quilt, and then I covered it with rickrack. I've never seen that done either. I just decided I wanted it. Okay. Then, look what I did on the side borders. I appliqued party hats using the leftover fabric from my pennants, I believe, and from my pinwheels. Isn't that fun? Y'all, this is another one of my favorite quilts. And it was hanging on a... Do y'all know what a pocket rod is? A pocket rod is this thing right here. It's a piece of fabric that you put, after you finish it all out, you put on the back, and a curtain rod or a rod will slide through here and hold the quilt up. So to enter one into any sort of competition or even a show of any kind, even if you're not competing, you have to have a pocket rod so they can hang it. So anyway, what do y'all think? Do you love it? Okay, so Connie is asking me about, yeah, it looks like a party, doesn't it, Tony? So how do you figure out the math? Well, the math was pretty simple for me. For what I did was I took the background here, and I made my, what am I trying to say? This is my medallion, so that was my base set, and I put two on each side, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top, and then filled in the corners. But, so I made those, and then put the sashing in between. So there's some math involved for sure. But it's a fun little quilt. I like it a lot. But I like yellow, and I like happy, and I like bright. And the back is covered with the scraps from that. Okay. You do remember, Catherine, when I made that? I just think that's so fun. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to show you tonight is this little quilt and the borders. Okay, this one is called something violets. So here is my center medallion. This is my using my tool. I put it on point. I added triangles to the corners to make it a square. And then I added a purple border. And then I added a border of blocks. And these blocks are called hourglass. That's what this is. So this is a block and that's an hourglass. It's the triangles, and there's some real shortcuts in making that. And then I put this exterior green border around it. So it actually has 1, 2, 3 borders. And
this could be a border too.
No, it's a setting corner triangle.
Okay. Never mind.
Well, I mean, it could be a border, but it's called a setting triangle. So, anyway, lots and lots of borders. So borders take math. And what I did, I'll tell you what I did. I made these blocks before I did the math on this quilt. I was making these blocks and demonstrating them at a retreat. So look how I fixed that. When I figured out the length and the width, I just added a big block of brown there because I didn't have enough and they didn't fit perfectly. So I just used, I shrunk it and then filled it in with something else. So that's one way to do it. When you don't know what, when you start off and do it. Now, for regular borders, here's the formula to figure out if you're just going to do a strip quilt. Here's the formula for borders. You measure all 4 sides. So pretend like this is 50 by 60 by 50 by 60. So you would add all that up. That would be 50 and 50 and 60 and 60. That's 220 inches, pretend. Okay? 220 inches is the length of the border. Regardless of width, you still need 220 inches long to cover all sides, right? Well, so to get just strips, you cut with the fabric, right? You lay your fabric that you purchased and you lay it down and you cut widths of fabric. So for me, we know a bolt of fabric is somewhere with the selvage between 42 and 44 inches, and they all differ. So by the time you cut off the selvage on each side, I always calculate 40 inches of usable fabric. So 40 inches per strip. Well, how many strips am I going to need to get 220? So it's 220 divided by 40. I've already done the math. I have a little calculator sitting right over there in a little workbook that I call Quilt Math that I use on every single quilt that I'm working out, whether it's batting or binding or whatever. Okay, so I need 220 divided by 40 inches is 5.5. What that means is 5.5 strips. Well, I'm not going to cut half a strip, so I'm going to cut 6. I always round up, so that's 6 strips. Doesn't matter how wide. Just 6 strips is what it's going to take to go around a 50 by 60 quilt. Now, then the question becomes, how wide do you want your quilt, your binding? Your border. Do you want so then you have to get practical. Well, I only have a yard. Oh, well, if you only have a yard and you have to do 6 strips, you could do 36 inches is a yard. You could do 6 inch wide. Or anything smaller, right? You could do 2 inches, whatever you want to do. But it's all about how many strips you need and how much fabric you have. If you have a whole bowl, you can do like me and add a 10-inch border. 10 inches wide, cut 10 inches wide, and you would need 60 inches. So that's how you figure out, that's the math for figuring out just a regular border. Now to do blocks, you have to, like this, to your question about blocks, what you have to do is know how big your blocks are and how wide this is going to be. See, my corner is here, my corner is here. I didn't have enough. So I had to scrunch these in and then add fabric. So it's a math game, right? And it's about wiggling it around. Okay, any other questions about borders? Have I overwhelmed you? Don't be afraid of borders. Borders are good. Borders are good for extending the width, for adding a design element, for adding more color, for, creating more interest. You can, I'll show you this. So y'all know that I'm in the Christian Quilt Guild. We make kids quilts. And I bought a bunch of panels I bought a bolt of fabric that was a bunch of panels. Now, it's got a built-in border, but if somebody wanted to add just a simple border around this to make it a little bit bigger for a kid, that one border, even 3-inch border around it, would make it fine for for our purposes for a kid to get and then a back. So that reminds me, if you ever want to make a kid's quilt and donate it to us, to the Christian Quilt Guild, to give away to their 2 organizations that we do for kids, if you ever want to do that, let me know. Or if you ever want one of these, I will send you a panel. If you'll make a top and a back and send it back to me, I will be happy to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to close by, gosh, that went fast. I'm going to close the whole trunk show, right? And I didn't get a third of my quilts out. I didn't even get 25% of my quilts out. But it's so fun to be able to teach this way. So thank y'all for listening. I have started each week to do something different, and this is the portion of the program where I will invite you again on Facebook. We started a group called We Are Called to Pray, and that group, we meet on Tuesdays, so tomorrow afternoon at 3:30. And if you're interested in that, it's a conference call. You just call in and listen and pray along with us. We pray for the country. We pray for everything that's going on in the world. That's what the prayer call is about. But I also have been writing devotionals. I've just been doing that. So I'm going to close tonight by reading a devotional. And what I'll do is, once I read this, then we'll close. So this one was dated June 18th last summer. So back when they were saying that this would be over by the end of summer. And here we are in February. So June 18th, I wrote Pressed Down from Jerry Ann's journal. Okay, so here we go. Now you have to remember I wrote that day. When I load a quilt on my machine, will you remove this? When I load a quilt on my machine, I attach the back of the quilt first. This is the back, facing down. Then I add a layer of batting, and I smooth it out. And then I put the quilt top on top of the batting facing the ceiling. The back of the batting must be larger by 4 inches on each side so I can snap it to my machine. You'll see these, I stretch it. Well, I don't stretch it, but snap it down. So when I finish quilting the whole quilt, I will trim all that excess around the edges off and discard those scraps. But I'm a quilter, and I'm frugal. So I take those scraps and I toss them into a box, a big box. My scrap box is 24 inches tall and 18 inches by 18 inches, so square. So for years, until this day or until June of last year, when the box would get full, I would just mash it down and throw more scraps in. Well, I began purging in June last year, and I tackled the scraps. I've been stuffing and pressing on the scraps since 2010. Seriously, 10 years, I didn't realize, of scraps. Quilters, a curious sort we are, know that one person's scrap would be another person's treasures. And I have a precious friend that loves scraps. And I always give my scraps to her. And she wants them, and she says, yes, I'll take your scraps. So we planned to visit, which is what we used to do without planning. We used to just visit, like in the olden days in 2019, and I was so excited. So to get ready to give her these scraps, I got a black trash bag. The box was 24 inches, it was this tall and this big, right? So I got a trash bag, and I started pulling the scraps out and filling the trash bag. 2/3 of the trash bag was full, and I was only 1/3 of the way through my scrap box. So I got another one, another black trash bag, and I filled it up to the 2/3 mark, and I was halfway through, a little over halfway through with my scraps. So then I got this giant one. I think they're body bags. There's huge ones, the ginormous kind, and I emptied the rest of the box. Doug even helped me. It was the craziest thing. Those scraps exploded like a Mento candy dropped in a glass of Coke. It was a scrap volcano. They poured out every shape and every size and every color, and they went every direction. Doug got down on his knees to gather up the bits and pieces that were fluttering around. It was, seriously, y'all, it was a marvel. My box of discarded scraps filled almost 3 trash bags full. That's when the Lord started working on me. Oh, he's so good to me that way. I could feel him saying, this is what I mean when I say, forgive and you will be forgiven. Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured unto you. So friends, let's be encouraged. Let's be hopeful. Let's give to others. Let's go to the Lord and ask how we can give and what we can give and to who we can give. Let's be praying for our family and our friends, our church, our community, our city, our states, and our country and the world. Let's pray for a revival and a return to godliness. And let's pray that souls will turn to Jesus. Let's ask the Lord to show us his will. And let's thank the Lord Almighty for sending his son, Jesus, to save us. And let's praise his name. And let's thank him for showing us what it means to forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, and it will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured unto you. So with that, I hope you have a blessed week and a marvelous Monday. And I love you all, and I will see you here next week. And if you have ideas, let me know, because I love them. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.